Hi everyone, it's me again, Jenny. You're warmly welcome to today's tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to make this Bayberry beaded bag. One of my followers on Instagram said this bag looks luxurious. Do you agree? Well, let's learn how to make it together. Let's go. For this project, firstly we'll need some beads. We're going to use these beads today. They are called Bayberry beads and they are in size 16 millimeters. I recently discovered that this bead has a lot of names, so depending on whatever you call it, that's fine, but according to Google, they are called Bayberry beads. You'll also need another type of bead. We're going to use these sugar beads today in size 10 millimeters. You'll also need two pairs of magnetic buttons. I got these regular ones as usual. You also need your fishing line. Today we'll be using 0.70 millimeters. And lastly, our scissors. That is all we'll need for this. Let's go. To start, you need to cut out some line. Cut out a length that will be comfortable for you to work with. Then on the left hand side of the line, you're going to add one big bead, that is your bayberry bead, then one small bead, that is your sugar bead. Do that again, one big bead and one small bead. You drag down the rest except from the last sugar bead you added. Then you cross both ends of your line into the sugar bead like this. Draw that all the way down and this is what you'll have. You just made your first ring. Okay? To proceed, on both sides of the line, this time we're going to add one big bead each. On the left you add one big bead, on the right you add one big bead, then you take one small bead and cross both ends of your line into that bead. Then you draw that all the way down. Make sure your work is super tight. Now you have made your second ring. To proceed, let's do what we just did right now. On both sides of the line, you add one big bead each. On the left, you add one big bead. On the right, you add one big bead. Then you take one small bead and cross both ends of your line into that small bead. And so far, we have done 3 rings. So here on, you're going to keep up with these steps. One on each side, that is one big bead on each side. Then you cross with one small bead. You're gonna keep building this until you get to your desired length. My desired length is 10 rings, but I'm going to stop at the 9th ring because the 10th ring will be different. So let's meet right there at the 9th ring. Let's go. I'm right here at the 9th ring, almost at my desired length. Let's do a recount. And yes, it is complete. It is now time to make the 10th ring, which is my desired length. So this time around, I won't add one big bead on each side and cross with one small bead. No, this time around, I'm going to add on the left hand side alone, one big bead, one small bead, and one big bead. Then I'll cross both ends of my line into the last big bead added. So this takes me over to the other side of my work and not the top as usual. And now we have completed the first row of our bag. This is what we have. To proceed, we want to start a new row now. So on the left hand side, we're going to start with one small bead, one big bead, and one small bead. Then you cross both ends of your line into the last small bead added. And this is what you have, the first ring on the second row. To proceed, the right hand side will go into that next bead there, and on the left hand side we add one big bead and one small bead. Then we cross both ends of the line into the small bead. Once that is done, we repeat what we just did. The right hand side will go into the next bead, and on the left we add one big bead and one small bead. Then we'll cross into the small bead. Draw that all the way down. Now you have your third ring. Let's do this process together one more time. Right hand side goes into the next bead, and on the left we add one big bead and one small bead. Now we have done 4 rings so far. So we're gonna keep up with this step. This is how the process will go. Keep this going until you get all the way down, but stop right here at the second to the last one because the last one will be different. So let's keep up with our routine and meet all the way there. Let's go. I'm here now at the second to the last one. Let's complete it together. On the left, I add one big bead and one small bead. Then I crossed into the small one, and now it's complete. This is what we have done so far. It is now time to create the last ring. So this time around, as usual, the right hand side will go into the next bead. But then I won't add any bead on the left hand side of my line. I'm going to add on the right hand side instead one small bead first, then one big bead, one small bead and one big bead. Notice how it's different from our usual pattern of one big bead first and one small bead. So this time we're going to interchange the steps. Okay, it is one small bead first and one big bead, then we cross into the big bead. So this takes us over to the other side of our work, and finally the second row is complete. This is what we have. Let's proceed. Let's walk through this process together one more time. So we want to start a new row now. On the left hand side, we're going to start with what? One small bead, one big bead and one small bead. Then we cross both ends of the line into the small bead. Now we have the first ring on the third row. Once that's done, the right hand side will go into that next bead there, and on the left hand side we add one big bead and one small bead. Then we cross into the small one. Do that again. The right hand side, go into the next bead, and on the left we add one big bead and one small bead. So we're gonna keep up with this routine. Keep this going until you get all the way down. Let's meet at the second to the last one again so I can show you how to end a row again. So let's go. I'm here now at the second to the last one. Let's complete it together. The right hand side goes into the next bead, and on the left we add one big bead and one small bead. Then we cross both ends of the line into the small one. We are now at the last one, so as usual the right hand side will go into the next bead, but this time still on that right hand side we add one small bead first, then one big bead. Instead of the usual pattern of one big bead and one small bead, it will be one small bead and one big bead. Then we cross both ends of the line into the big one. So this will take us over to the other side, and now the third row is complete. So yeah, as simple as this is how the building of the rows would go. We have done 3 rows so far. We're going to keep up with this process until we reach our desired row length. I'm going to keep up with this process until I get to 21 rows. Okay, 21 rows. So let's meet there at 21 rows. Let's go. I'm here now at my desired row length. I have done up to 21 rows in total. This is what my work looks like. Now that I have arrived at my desired total length, the next thing I'm going to do right now is to define the parts of my bag. I'm going to divide it into 3 parts: the front, the back and the base. Okay, the front, the back and the base. So let's do that right now. From the first bead on the edge, I'm going to count 9 beads downwards. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Now that I have arrived at the 9th row, I will then bend it like this to shape it up nicely. Let's do a recount. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and that's it. So the front part right here is 9 rows. Then to create the base, I'm going to count from that place I bent 3 beads downwards. 1 2 3, then I bend it right there at the last one. Press on it very well to make sure it shapes up nicely. Alright, so that's it. We have now defined all sides of our bag. We have the front part, the back part and the base of our bag. So this is what your work should look like as well. It is now time for the next part, that is creating the sides of this bag. Firstly, we have to cut out some line, cut out enough length. Then let's lift up our work. We're going to start working on the second frame. Look at this outer part here. We won't go into it because it is just like a frame for our bag. So we're going to start working on the inner part. That is the second line of sugar bead right there. Okay, I hope that's clear. Then look closely at the bottom part. We're going to pass our line through the first bead of the base and the last bead of the front side of our bag. Okay, these two beads right there. 1, 2. You're gonna pass your line through them. Once that is done, you will then add on the left hand side of your line one big bead and one small bead. Then you cross both ends of your line into the small bead. Draw that all the way down, and this is what you'll have. To proceed, the right hand side, look closely to go into that next sugar bead right there. Pass the right hand side of your line through that bead. Then on the left hand side, you're going to add one big bead and one small bead. Then you cross into the small one. We are now at the final part. This is the third of the 3 rings that were at the base of the bag. Okay, so you're going to pass your line through those beads right there. That is the third bead. Then that other bead on the edge, because this right here is like a dead end where we pass into 2 beads. So once that is done, you will then take one big bead and cross both ends of your line into that big bead. And now the first row of the side of this bag is now complete. So this is what you have. To proceed, let's create a new row. This time around, the right hand side will go into that next bead right there on the side, that sugar bead. And when we do that, the right hand side will then convert to the left hand side of our line. So the left hand side this time, we will then add one big bead and one small bead. Once that is done, the right hand side will go into the next bead, and on the left hand side we add one big bead and one small bead. We are now at the final part, which is the third bead now. So the right hand side will go into that big bead and that sugar bead right there on the side. Why? Because this is the dead end. This is the last of the 3 rings of the base of this bag. Okay, I hope that's clear. So let's do that. Then we'll take one big bead to close that up, and finally we are done with the second row of the side of this bag. This is how the building of the rows would go. Let's walk through this process together one more time before I leave you to do the entire thing on your own. So to start a new row, this time around, the left hand side would go into that next sugar bead on the side. Then still on the left hand side, we will add one big bead and one small bead. Then we cross into the small one. Once that is done, the right hand side would go into that next big bead there, and on the left hand side we add one big bead and one small bead. We're now at the final part, which is the third one. This time around, the right hand side will go into the next big bead and that sugar bead right there on the side. Then we take one more big bead to close that up, and now we are done with the third row of the side of our bag. So yes, you're gonna keep up with this process until you get all the way to the top. Finish this up on your own, okay? And when you're done, you pass around your line to end it. So I'll do that on my own, and I'll leave you to do yours on your own. So let's do that. I'm done with mine. I have joined both sides with the process, and this is what it looks like. This is what your work should look like as well. It is now time for the next part, that is creating the flap or the cover of this bag. To do that, you're going to cut out some line. Then we're going to start from this second bead right here. Remember, we're going to skip this first one because that is the frame of our bag. We won't go into it. So pass your line through that second bead right there on the edge. Draw out your line, make sure it is of equal length. Then on the left hand side, you're going to start with one small bead, one big bead, and one small bead. Then you cross both ends of your line into the small one. Draw that all the way down. Once that is done, the right hand side would go into that next big bead right there, and on the left hand side you add one big bead and one small bead. To proceed, let's repeat what we just did. Right hand side goes into the next bead, and on the left hand side we add one big bead and one small bead. So you're going to keep up with this routine. This is our normal routine of building a row. Keep this going until you get all the way down. Let's stop at the second to the last one together because the last one will be different as usual. So let's go. I'm here at the second to the last one. Let's complete it together. The right hand side will go into the next bead, and on the left hand side I will add one big bead and one small bead. Then I cross into the small one. To complete the last one, as usual, the right hand side will go into the next bead. Then still on that right hand side, not the left, we are going to add one small bead first, then one big bead. Then we cross into the big one. Okay? So this will take us over to the other side. Notice how we didn't go into that last bit because that is the frame of our bag. So this is what your work should look like. Now we have made one row of the flap of our bag. So this is how the process will go. We're going to keep building the rows until we get to our desired row height. Okay, we have done one row now, just like we were doing in the beginning part of the video when we're creating the rows for our bag. That's what we're going to keep repeating until we reach our desired row height. So I have done one complete row and I am on the second row now. I'm going to keep this going until I get to 9 rows. Okay, 9 rows. So let's meet all the way there. Let's go. I am done building the rows of the flap of this bag. I'm here at my desired row height. I did 9 rows in total, and yes, it's complete. So this is what your work should look like as well. It is now time to add some little pointy edges on the flap of this our bag. To do that, we're going to cut out some line. Then look closely. We're going to start from the second bead inwards on the edge, that bead right there. Okay, you're going to pass your line through it. Draw out your line, make sure it is of equal length. Then on the left hand side of the line, you're going to start with one small bead, one big bead, and one small bead. Then you cross both ends of your line into the small bead. Once that is done, the right hand side would go into that next bead, that is the first bead right there on the edge. Still on that right hand side, we will then add one small bead and one big bead. Then we'll cross into the big bead. And this is what you have. Let's proceed. We have one more row to go. On the left hand side, we start with one small bead, one big bead, and one small bead. And finally, we are done with that. This is where we are going to stop. So from here on, let's pass around our line to end it. Let's do that. I'm done with that, and here is what it looks like. So you want to repeat everything we have done on the other side as well. Remember, you start from the second bead on the edge. So I'll leave you to do that on your own. Let's go. I'm done adding this on both sides, and this is what it looks like. This is what yours should look like as well. It is now time to fold in the flap. Let's fold it in nicely like this. Make sure everything is properly aligned, and this is what it looks like. Look closely, look at the number of rings on the sides. We have one ring right there at the edge close to the back part of the bag. Then we have 3 rings in the middle, then one bead right there at the edge close to the front part. Then the rest of the flap just falls in nicely on the bag. So this is what your work should look like as well. It is now time for the next part, that is attaching the magnetic button to our bag. Firstly, we want to press the ends of the magnetic button like this with our thumb just to flatten it. Okay, this is what it should look like. Repeat the same thing on the opposite side of the button. Press it down as well to make sure it's flat. Do the same to the second pair of buttons as well. It is now time to locate exactly where the magnetic button will be. So I think I'm going to choose this spot right here. And how do you locate it on your own? You go to the second bead inwards, you know the place we started the pointy edges from, so that is where the magnetic buttons will be as well. So let's cut out some line, then we're going to pass our line through that sugar bead on the side of that area we picked out. Okay, that sugar bead right there, pass your line through it. You're going to take your magnetic button and pass both ends of your line through the holes beneath the magnetic button. The one on the left will go to the one on the left, and the one on the right will go to the one on the right. Once that is done, you will then cross both ends of your line into the next sugar bead, still in that area, that sugar bead right there. Pass your line through it. I'm done with that. Make sure your work is super tight. You will then connect your line through the next big beads right there on the side, still in that area. Okay, I'm done with that, and from here on I'm going to pass around my line to end it. So let's do that. Alright, so this is what I have. You then want to repeat everything we just did now to the other side. Remember how to locate it. You go 2 bits inwards, and that area is where your magnetic button will be placed. So I'll leave it to do that on your own. I'm done adding the buttons on both sides, and this is what I have. This is what yours should look like as well. It is now time for the next part. We want to locate where the opposite side of our magnetic buttons will be placed. So firstly, we're going to close in our flap like this. Make sure everything is properly aligned and is in position. What you want to do right now is to press the flap on the bag to know exactly where the opposite side would stay. So keep pressing on the bag like this, and that spot right there, if you can see clearly, is where the second part of the button will be placed. The next thing you do is to cut out some line. Then you're going to pass your line through the sugar bead right there on the side of that spot we picked out. Then you're going to take your magnetic button and pass both ends of your line through the holes beneath the magnetic button. We're done with that. We are then going to cross both ends of our line through the next sugar bead right there on the side. That is done. The next thing you're going to do is to pass both ends of your line through the sides of that marked area. That is those big beads right there. Alright, we are done with that, and right now we're going to pass around our line to end it. So let's do that. This is what we have. We then want to repeat everything we have done on this side to the other side as well. So I'll leave you to do that one on your own. I'm done with mine, so let's close that in and check if it works. And yeah, it works good. So this is what your work should look like as well. It is now time for the final part, that is creating the handle for this bag. Now we have to locate where the handle will be. So where would this handle be? Well, I want you to notice the number of rings on the side of our flap. We have 3 rings right there. We're then going to locate the middle of those 3 rings. Then we count 2 bits inwards. 1, 2. And that spot right there is where our handle will be placed. So you're going to cut out some line. Let's locate the area again. That spot right there. Pass your line through that big bead right there. Then on the left hand side, you're going to start with 1 big bead, 1 small bead, and 1 big bead. Then we cross both ends of our line into the big bead. And this is what we'll have. To proceed, the right hand side would go into the next sugar bead in that area we picked out, okay? That sugar bead right there. Then on the left hand side, you're going to add this time 1 small bead and 1 big bead. Then we cross into the big one. Once that is done, the right hand side would go into the next big bead right there, still in that area we picked out. And on the left, we add 1 small bead and 1 big bead. Then we cross into the big one. We are now at this final part. Here is something I like to call a dead end. So this time, the right hand side would go into that sugar bead right there and that big bead. Then we're going to take just 1 sugar bead to close that in. And finally, we are done with the first row. This is what it looks like so far. Let's proceed. We have to create 1 more row. We're going to start with 1 big bead, 1 small bead, and 1 big bead. Then we cross into the big bead. To proceed, the right hand side will go into the next sugar bead right there. Then on the left hand side, we add 1 small bead and 1 big bead. Once that is done, the right hand side will go into the next sugar bead, and on the left we add 1 small bead and 1 big bead. We are now at this final part right here. Is a dead end, so the right hand side of our line would go into the next sugar bead and that big bead right there. Then we close it in with 1 sugar bead, and finally we are done with that. So from here on, let's pass around our line to end it. Let's go. I'm done with that. Let us then repeat everything we have done on this other side as well. Remember to locate where the handle will be. You're going to notice the 3 beads on the side of the flap, then the middle, then you count 2 beads inwards, and that is where the handle will be. So do that on your own. Let's go. I'm done with mine, and here is what it looks like. This is what yours should look like as well. It is now time for the final part, that is attaching the sugar bead handle. So right there you're going to notice a pattern of 4 beads. Cut out some line, then pass your line through one of those beads right there. Then on the left hand side of the line you're going to start with 3 sugar beads, and then you cross into the last one added. Once that is done, the right hand side will go into the next bead, that is the second of the pattern of 4 beads, and on the left hand side we add 2 beads and cross into the last one. We're done with that. Let's repeat what we just did. The right hand side will go into the next bead, and on the left hand side we add 2 beads and cross into the last one. We are now at this final part. This part is a dead end, so this time around the right hand side will go into those 2 beads right there. Then we take one more bead and close that up, and now we are done with the first row. So yeah, this step is very simple. We start a new row with 3 beads, then we keep going to the next beads and adding 2 beads until we then get to the last part where it's a dead end. We're going to go into 2 beads and cross with 1. So you're going to keep up with this routine until you reach your desired length. I'm going to do this until I get to 11 rows. Okay, let's build up the rows until we get to 11 rows. Let's go. I'm here now at 11 rows. This is what it looks like, and this is what yours should look like as well. It is now time to connect this part of the handle to the other side. To do that, firstly we want to find exactly where our line is facing. So we're going to press our handle on the other side like this to know exactly where our line is facing, and our line is facing that bead right there. Now that we have located it, it's now time to join it. So on this side of the line we're going to add 1 bead first, then connect it to that bead our line is facing. Once that is done, we then take 1 more bead to close that up. And this is what it looks like. We just close the first one. To proceed, both sides of the line will go through those next beads. The one on the left will go to the one on the left, and the one on the right will go to the one on the right. Then we take 1 more bead to close that up. To proceed, repeat the same thing. Both sides of the line will go through both beads. Then we take 1 more bead to close that up. We are now at this final part. All we need to do right here is to pass around our line through those beads to make sure it is properly joined. Okay, so let's do that. I'm done with that, and finally we are done attaching the handle. So from here on, let's pass around our line to end it. Okay, let's do that. I'm done with everything, and that concludes the making of our bag. This is what we have. Look at that. You know, right now I'm trying to imagine how I'm going to style this bag because I really love the design, and I hope you do as well. Hopefully this tutorial was helpful to you. You know, if you'd like a bigger bag, right, what you want to do is to start with another even number. Like in the beginning of this video, I started with 10 rings, so you can choose 12 rings. 12 rings is like the standard size. I only went with 10 rings because I was working with limited number of beads. So you can do 12 rings or 14 rings, 16 rings, however you prefer. And yeah, so I hope this was helpful to you. Please do not forget to like, share to your friends too. Please be generous with this video, okay? And yeah, I'll see you all in my next tutorial. Goodbye.